Hi, I'm Vanessa,
Hi, I'm Jacinta.
and this is Strange Colony Podcast. I don't know.
Strange colony.
E. Oh, that was funny. So funny.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. In a minute.
A minute.
Anywho, we're going to have to jump right in because I've got so much to cover today, and I do not want to drag it out for like 5 eps, which could happen.
She loves her some Ned, but she doesn't love him that much.
Right. So at the end of the last episode, we were preparing for the Jerilderie raid. Yes. Before the raid took place, a bunch of Kelly Gang sympathizers went out to the town, got settled, and set themselves up just gathering resources and information and all that sort of stuff, and got themselves in a position to provide support.
Infiltration.
Oh, yeah. This is how the gang got away with so much. Like, their plans were not just, like, done that day. They were done in advance, and they planned. They forward planned that shit. They had a business plan. They did. Like, it may not be legitimate business, but they did. So a couple of days before the raid, they've gone and crossed the Murray River, which then puts them into New South Wales. Jerilderie is a New South Wales town.
Uh-huh.
And they camped out in the forest, and then on the 8th of February, we're still in 1879.
Mm-hmm.
Such a big fucking year. They stop in at Davidson's Inn, and they're chatting to the locals, shouting some beers, all that sort of stuff, and just getting a little bit of a vibe for the town for themselves.
Doing the legwork.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, you ply people with alcohol, of course they're going to talk a bit more. They're going to like you, all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
what a solid plan. They also wanted to know what the police presence was like, whether the banks had the armed guards and all that sort of stuff like they'd started doing in northeast Victoria.
Yeah.
So these people have that information. They drink all through the night at the pub.
Oof.
It's now just after midnight on the Sunday morning, and they head into Jerilderie itself.
Mm-hmm.
They're aiming to go for the police barracks straight up.
Okay.
The plan actually was to notify the local police of a fake brawl at the inn that they had just come from.
Right.
To get the presence out of town. But they only found 2 police constables at the barracks on duty. Like, nowhere near the presence that they were expecting. And so they just bailed them up, locked them in the main building, and spent the night in the residential quarters.
Sure.
One of the constables had his wife and children there. The gang held them hostage as well, but,
Given.
you know,
Yeah. Standard.
nothing major. Like, but yeah, threw the cops in their own cells. Kind of funny. A little bit.
A little bit.
After they had secured their hold on the barracks, they spent a bit of time just sort of preparing for the robbery, what they were going to need in terms of, like, ammunitions, who's doing what roles, all that sort of stuff. The afternoon, Hart and Byrne took the police officers' uniforms.
Yep.
Shut up. And they dressed as some police officers, and they took one of the constables that they had in lockup, Constable Richards. They took him into Jerilderie with them, got him to show them around, take them places, get them familiarised with the layout of the town.
Yeah.
And when people would ask who they were, he just introduced them as reinforcements to help capture the Kelly Gang.
Yeah.
The next day, it was Ned and Joe playing dress-ups.
Yep.
And all the Kelly gang, towing riches with them, went into town.
Yeah.
They've got the other police constable and his wife in the lockup in the cells.
Yeah.
They also threatened to burn that building down if they tried to escape.
Yep.
But, what are they going to do when they're in town? So they're down in the main street of Drury, and they head down to the Royal Mail Hotel. They decided to hold up the hotel first, as it was right next door to the Bank of New South Wales, which was their primary target.
Yeah.
And that way they could secure a lot of, hostages to use as leverage if they needed it, get the passers-by, and it also provided them rear access to the hotel.
Yeah.
So people weren't going to get too alarmed.
Yeah.
So after they secured the hotel and all that sort of stuff, Ned and Joe entered the bank from the rear, and Dan and Hart were left to deal with all the hostages.
Right.
Once they were in the bank and had control of it, they got £2,141 in cash.
Whew.
And
Solid.
other valuables, so jewelry, other things like that. They also got all the deeds and mortgages and from this bank as well.
Yeah.
And those documents he burned the fuck out of. And I quote, stating, "Because the bloody banks are crushing the life's blood out of the poor, struggling man."
Uh-huh.
This is his big political
stunt. That's really what it was about.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Lighting his own coffers. But it's a good way to get regular people on side.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He played his cards very well.
Yeah.
Until that last one, he played his cards quite well.
Yeah.
Wouldn't get away with it in this day and age, though.
No.
So all the staff and customers from the bank were ushered into the parlour of the hotel to join the other hostages.
Uh-huh.
It's also said that some of those patrons of the hotel were planted sympathisers to help with crowd control and all that too.
Very likely.
I mean, it's worked for them so far. After that, Joe went out, Joe Byrne. He held up the post office.
Yep.
His mission to destroy the Morse key and the insulator so that they could cut off the telegraph. Yep. That they got some prisoners, gave them some axes, and had them cut down the telegraph poles. I don't understand how these people with axes just didn't take him on. But then I suppose the whole Kelly gang would actually come for you then.
Yes.
So, unless the prisoners taking down the telegraph poles were in fact sympathisers. But anywho, they severed the town's communications just the same as they did in Euroa. They just did it in reverse.
Yeah.
Ned went to the newspaper owner's home with the intention of having him publish another letter known as the Jerilderie letter. Go look it up. It's, got some shit in it. But sadly for Ned, the newspaper owner had escaped the bank earlier and fled town.
Yeah.
So he did not get his little 15 minutes at the moment that he wanted it.
Moment.
Yeah. So because he missed out on that, he goes back to the hotel and he gives a speech to all the hostages in regards to his motives, his grievances, and all that sort of stuff. And, I'm acting on behalf of the people. It's, it's the government's fault. It's the bank's fault. And, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, talk about a captive audience.
But after that, he released all the hostages except for the post office workers and the police constable that they still had with them. And they took them all back to the police barracks when they were leaving. Once they were there, they locked everybody up in the cells. Ned chanced going back into town and he had a drink with some travelers and a parson and all that sort of stuff. Like, really just, I'm
Chilling.
here for the people.
Uh-huh.
Dude could have been a politician.
Yes.
Just saying.
Oh,
So
dear.
the gang left town with their loot, including police horses and weapons, because, like, they really went for it.
Yeah.
And they managed to live on the land for the next, it's, some say 16, some say 17 months, but nearly a year and a half.
Solid effort.
Solid. During this time, Joe Byrne penned a bunch of bush ballads describing the gang's exploits. This is where a lot of things have come from, aside from people's statements.
Right. Joe the
And
poet.
also, Joe the poet. He also was a little bit of a badass and would be frequently going up to, like, the Beechworth area, going to go visit his mom and hang out at bars and all that sort of stuff. And he did this in spite of the bounty that was on them. And he managed to dodge police every step of the way. That whole time.
Okay.
Like, I'm a little bit impressed by that.
Indeed.
So, because of people saying that they cited him and all that sort of stuff, this also resulted in a royal commission into the efficacy of the police.
Ow.
Yeah. So while the gang's in hideout, the police are mounting searches, keeping surveillance on close family and friends. They were using as many informants as they could get their hands on, paying them, all that sort of stuff. They even got in some Aboriginal troopers
Oh, for
that
tracking
they had on
purposes.
staff. Correct. And these ones were brought down from Queensland and specifically known for their tracking abilities. They'd assisted in a bunch of other cases and were quite reputable in getting results.
Yeah.
It's said that Ned was really scared that they would actually find him.
Not surprised.
Fair. But Chief Commissioner Standish and Superintendent Hare, who were directing the operation to locate the Kelly gang, they had doubts as to whether these troops would be able to be of any sort of assistance and did not use them to the best of their advantage.
Right. So, police be racist.
That's what I read into that too. So the troops were withdrawn until another incident later down the track.
Oh,
That was
wow.
their best chance, and they didn't use them properly because prejudice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know now that back then there was nobody who knew the lay of the land like the Aboriginals.
Correct. But these Kelly boys, like, they'd been growing up on the land, they'd grown up in the bush, they
Yeah.
knew how to.
Yeah.
So
that was the
yeah,
best chance that they had to catch them.
that was the best chance. Because the cops have mostly come up from, like, Melbourne, things
I was
like
going to
that.
say affluential kind of areas.
Correct. And even the ones who were stationed around northeast Victoria in, Benalla, Wangaratta and all that sort of stuff, they're still the more built up towns.
Yeah.
Even now, they're still more built up than the other areas that are mentioned.
Yeah.
So they're used to certain luxuries, would you call them?
I would just say it's a different type of terrain, essentially.
Yeah. And the police were not, they weren't trackers.
No.
So they couldn't tell the difference between, crushed leaves from the wind or from logs to, like, crushed leaves from footprints.
Yeah. But I suppose that'd go both ways. I mean, someone who'd been out bush would struggle in a city.
That's very true. Very true. There's a reason why everyone always came back to 11 Mile Creek after they'd done their time. So, known sympathisers of the Kelly gang and members of the families of the Kelly gang were prevented from buying land and thwarted at any steps that they may have made to gain anything in life.
Yep.
And just to try and then draw the gang out.
Uh-huh.
It was, but there are debates as to whether it was useful or whether it just created resentment.
Oh, well, I mean, unless you've actually got proof, that would be highly illegal now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. On the 3rd of July, a new assistant commissioner was appointed to take charge of the search operations.
Yep.
Last name of Nicholson. And the police commissioner Standish cut the budget for the search. Troops were reduced, guards from banks were withdrawn, and Nicholson had to rely solely on targeted surveillance to try and locate the Kelly gang.
That poor dude.
I know, right? Come in and do this job. We've already gotten rid of your best chance at finding these guys, plus we're reducing your budget.
Yeah,
good luck!
But we still expect results.
Exactly. Man, I'd be drinking every day just from the stress. And after this, it was around this time that the Kelly gang had received information that Joe's old school friend Aaron Sherritt, that they had talked out of joining the gang.
I remember him.
But had been lurking around the edges, had sold them out to the police.
Oh!
And he was working as an informant for them. This was confirmed by Joe's mother. She had spotted the police at Sherritt's residence and got word out to the gang.
Wow.
And it turns out he'd been doing it for a long time. So there was 4 police officers present in his house. They were using it as a base of operations to do a search. So this is in Beechworth. The gang's hiding out around Glen Rowan.
Yeah.
So they were Constable Robert Alexander, Henry Armstrong, Thomas Dowling, and William Duros. Dan Kelly and Joe Byrne went to the next door neighbour of Sherritt, who was a German man named, and I got 2 last names for him, and I don't know which one's the right one, but it's Anton either Weeks or Wick.
Yeah.
Or Wicks. So I don't know which one's the right one. They all sound about the same. Whatever.
Okay.
But they handcuffed him and used him as bait to draw Aaron out of the house. They had him go up to the door and yell out to him, but this worked. And Aaron comes up to the back door. Dan's standing at the front door. Joe's at the back door waiting for Sherritt to come out. And as he's coming out of the house, he shoots him twice in the chest with a shotgun.
Fucking pulling the punches.
Yeah. Oh, he made sure he was dead. Like, that's his best mate from school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And after that, Dan enters the front door. Joe goes in the back door. Aaron Sherritt's pregnant wife was inside. Oh. And they try and get her, but they try and get her to get the police to come down from downstairs because they were hiding under a bed upstairs in the bedroom.
Yep.
And so they send her up there. The police wouldn't release her. They're making all sorts of threats. They go to start a fire to burn them out of the house and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't work. So they're just out there yelling threats for a couple of hours, and they end up releasing Wick and then returning to the hideout.
Yep. Oh, that's rough.
That is rough. Like, I feel so bad for that pregnant woman.
I'm not surprised, though, that it was Dan and Joe that did that. Just based on their exploits versus Ned and Hart.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I don't like when Ned's been in charge. There's as little bloodshed as possible.
Yeah.
Dan's the freaking hothead,
Oh, absolutely.
and Joe's just happy to do whatever if it's being cocky, and he being that it was his childhood friend. It wouldn't have taken much for Dan to be like, "Yeah, we need to fucking off him."
Yeah.
Like, y'all could have just stopped talking to him. Just saying, can't inform if you've
So,
got nothing to inform.
exactly. Exactly right. But there was a problem. They took care of it their way. After they got back to the hideout, the boys figured it wouldn't be long before word would get out about their dealings with Sherritt.
Yeah,
So they're figuring it would only be a couple of days before reinforcements would be coming up from Melbourne again and all that sort of stuff. And this was after the invention of the steam train, so they're going to be coming up by train, they figure.
quicker.
Get them up there as quick as possible. The train would go through Benalla before passing through Glenrowan and then continuing on down the line.
Yeah,
Glenrowan is where their hideout is.
yeah,
So the plan was to break the tracks and wreck the train.
Yep.
Shoot any survivors, and then go on to Benalla on a robbery spree. They also wanted to hit the courthouses, blow up police barracks, set any prisoners free, all that sort of stuff, like really go the hack on it.
they're escalating.
Oh, absolutely. They're doing that thing that most crooks do before they're going to get caught. It's also said that it's possible that they were going to take any survivors from the train wreck as hostage and use them as leverage.
Hmm.
Dan and Byrne are hanging around Woolshed Valley, which is outside of Beechworth, but before coming down to like Glenrowan. Ned and Hart were at work trying to break the railway tracks.
Yeah.
They didn't succeed, but found some labourers nearby to help with the job who did so unwillingly.
Right.
So, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, points to the boys for being able to convince people to work for them.
Convinced.
Yes.
Some good persuasion methods.
Oh, absolutely. So after all the Kelly gang meet up in Glenrowan, they're all back together. They took over the railway station, the station master's home, and Anne Jones Glenrowan Inn. So pub, train station, station master.
Yeah.
They use the inn to hold captives, including passers-by, same as in Euroa and Jerilderie. Like, they've got their MO down now.
Mm-hmm.
There was another hotel across the main street called McDonald's Railway Hotel. They use this place as stables for the horses, and storage for items for the raid.
Yeah.
So we're talking like blasting powder, fuses, suits of bullet-repelling armor, which they made from stolen agricultural equipment. This is the iconic armor that everybody knows. We'll throw some pics up of cops wearing them and taking photos. Like, ugh.
And the one that all the Aussie blokes get tattooed on them too.
Yeah, which, is actually not Ned, because none of the photos were of Ned in the armor. It's always police wearing them, just so everybody knows. Yeah.
Oh, lordy.
Well, there's no photos of the actual shootout.
No, true. Yeah.
So, yeah, the armor was a helmet and a chest plate, like a big barrel-chested thing. It weighed like 44 kilos. They didn't bother with arm or leg armor because they wanted to be able to, like, get around. Plus, if the story that they were shooting survivors is the real story, which,
Maybe.
up for debate, they were going to be shooting from an embankment.
Mm.
So, leg armor, not necessary.
Also, 44 kilo, you're looking at about 90 pounds there.
Yeah. Plus, they needed to be able to ride horses. Leg armor, not going to work. Not made out of those big plow blades that they were using. So
did they all have suits?
yes.
Right.
All 4 of them had the armor.
Right. Whereas it's only known that Ned did.
Yeah. But they all had their armor.
Right.
The reason that there is the story for the potentially using them as leverage was to get like William Skillion, William Williamson, and Ellen Kelly released from jail.
Right.
But whether that would have worked, like, how would you make that trade? All that sort of shit. Like, there's a lot of things wrong with that.
Yeah.
That version of events. At this point as well, so just before all this happened, James had been released from prison and was working for a bootmaker in Sydney because he wasn't a part of this whole operation. Him then going and joining them could have potentially had them found out, like if he was being followed, things like that.
Yeah.
So he was, off being legit for a while and honing that skill that he
Good
learned.
for him.
Good for him. On later, after that, no, earlier. At some point before the Glen Rowan thing, our Nicholson was replaced by Assistant Police Commissioner Hare again.
Sure.
So
Nicholson's fault he hadn't caught them.
Yeah. And an informant came and told him on back in June, so a month before the Glen Rowan shit went down, that the Kelly gang had made bulletproof armor and that they were planning another raid. And he didn't believe a single word. He didn't believe it.
Yep.
There was a delay in news getting down to Melbourne because the officers from the Sherritt House incident were too scared. They did not leave the house until the next day, until daylight.
Yeah, I fucking wouldn't either.
So news didn't hit Melbourne as quickly as the gang had planned. So they've got all these people holed up in the hotel. They're drinking, playing games, singing, all that sort of shit. Just having a jolly old time whilst keeping them hostage. Blows my mind.
Sure.
As always, mixed reviews from the hostages. Some saying that, they're chivalrous, jolly good fun. And others are saying, he taunted me at gunpoint. At some point, Ned released some hostages that he had deemed trustworthy. I'm pretty sure that's just the liquor talking. And the plan wasn't going off as it should have, so everybody's just getting restless, including our gang members.
Yep.
They're getting to the point of, they don't know if it's even going to work at all. There's a little bit of,
fuck.
Yeah, in the ranks. And there's 2 stories about how shit started. This one is the one that I actually believe because this dude got a nice whopping reward at the end of it.
Okay.
So Ned let Thomas Curnow, a schoolmaster, go home with his wife. Dan didn't like the idea. Did not want him, didn't trust him, didn't want him to go. And Curnow starts talking with his wife, blah, 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 about what their options are. And he can hear the train approaching, and he goes and runs down to the railway line with his lantern and his wife's silk scarf, and he's waving it around trying to get the driver's attention. It's around 3 a.m, trying to alert them, stop that effing train before it hits the broken tracks.
Yeah.
And he did manage to get the driver's attention. The train stopped before hitting the broken rails.
Yeah.
And the police get out of the train and they start getting organized. Like, they're getting information, they're getting intel, all that sort of stuff. Also on this train, our Aboriginal trackers have returned.
Oh. They finally realised that they can be useful.
Yeah. And there were some journos and other people on this train as well, because, you know, they're just waiting for shit to go down. Yeah. So it's, 3 a.m. in the morning. Ned's preparing to let all the hostages go. He's just wording them up about, being police informers and all that sort of shit. And Joe comes inside and he's just like, I've heard the train, it's here, all that sort of stuff. But it's not been derailed.
Yep.
At this point, the police are getting themselves organised. They have been told where the gang is, where they're hiding out, and they've figured out their game plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the gang have geared up. They've got their armour on. They've got their weapons on the ready. And they go hang out in the shadows of the veranda of the pub. And we're talking, the police at this point as well are starting to circle around the hotel.
Yep.
So making a full-on siege situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's said that the Kelly gang fired first, and the police were quick to return fire. It's estimated that 150 shots were fired in the first 15 minutes.
Okay.
After about that 15 minutes, there was a lull as people were heard screaming that there's women and children in the hotel still.
Yeah.
These were the ones that Ned was going to let go just before the siege happened. 3 hostages in total, so 3 civilians were wounded in the entirety of the siege. And Superintendent Hare and Ned got wounded within that first 15 minutes as well.
Right.
The policeman, he copped one in like the wrist, and it said that Ned took shots to the arm, hand, and leg. But he's still going. Like, dude's like beast mode activated.
Oh dear.
So the superintendent was taken away to Benalla to get treated. It said that Joe Byrne got shot. It's not sure whether it was within that 15 minutes or a little bit later, but he copped a fatal wound whilst making a toast at the bar to the gang. So I'm pretty sure it's a little bit later on. It's not during like that initial thing. It's once they were sieged up, like holed up inside.
Yep.
And he got shot in the leg. And it just happened to like nick that artery
Femoral artery.
That one.
Yep.
So, lull in gunfire, women and children are released. They're getting out of the hotel. Ned's bleeding. He's like left the hotel. He's hiding out in the bush. The police find his helmet and rifle floating around, but they just leave it there. But they can't find him.
Okay.
And like his stuff's only like 100 yards away from the hotel. Ned said in his statement later that he was hiding very close to where they were. He could actually see them.
Can you imagine that though? Like,
yeah. Oh my god. And you're bleeding. Like, you're in pain.
I was going to say not such a huge thing for someone who owns a vagina, but bleeding in pain.
Yeah.
Once a moon. But yes, no.
So there's a little bit of from the storyline from here. it's not decided what bits happened at what point.
Mm.
But Ned's looking for his brother, trying to get Dan out of the building because he's looking to make an escape, apparently. But some people say that he was just hiding out in the bush the whole time.
Yep.
Somewhere between 5:30 and 7 a.m., more police reinforcements arrive.
Ooh.
And so Ned's either been hiding out of bushes or he's been toing and froing from the hotel trying to get Dan. We don't know. But around the time that the reinforcements arrive, Ned is seen back in his armor, 3 handguns coming out from hiding, and he attacks the police from the rear.
Sure.
Police return fire. Dan and Steve were providing cover fire from within the hotel.
Yep.
And a police officer, last name of Steele, was the one who brought Ned down. He's received a lot of gunshot wounds, but it took shotgun blasts to his legs.
Oof.
In both thighs, lower legs, to get him off his horse, disarm him, and all that sort of stuff. Once he's in custody, they take him to see a doctor because they're not letting this prick die.
Are you going to see justice?
Yeah, all of that. So Ned's been captured. He's in custody. The siege at the hotel carried on for another 3 hours.
Damn. Okay.
At 10 a.m., a ceasefire was called so that the remaining hostages within the hotel could be released.
Yep.
A police inspector, Sadlier, who at this point was running the show for the siege, would not let Maggie Kelly or Father Gibney, who's the parson that Ned drank with up in Jerilderie.
Yep.
I think that's him. No, that's a different one.
Okay.
My bad. But a local pastor.
Yep.
They wouldn't let them go into the hotel to try and get the remaining gang members to surrender. It wasn't known at this point that Joe had been shot. So they're thinking there's still 3 gang members in there.
Yep.
He's sent telegrams to Melbourne, he's ordering for a cannon to be brought up because he's just going to blast his fucking way in.
Uh-huh.
After some thought, because obviously emotions are running high, he decided that he would just burn them out instead.
They're still hostages, right?
Oh, during the ceasefire, the hostages have been released. We are now down to our gang members, sympathizers, and supporters who have stuck behind.
Oh, well, I just wouldn't have let the hostages out.
Well, they hadn't seen Ned. They don't know where Ned is.
Well, no.
We're down to...
Without the hostages, they can bring cannons in.
Well, we are down to Dan's in charge.
Oh, God.
Because Joe's dead.
Yeah. Yep.
And Steve was never a leader.
No. Oh, God.
So, it's about 3 p.m. The police, so this is 5 hours after the ceasefire.
Yes.
The police set fire to the hotel.
Yep.
Our beloved pastor ignored the police and still went into the burning building whilst it's still crispy. And he found Joe dead and also Steve Hart and Dan Kelly in another area dead. They were laying down next to each other, heads on their blankets.
Aww.
No one knows the exact cause of death for those 2 boys. Some say that they shot each other instead of facing capture. Some say suicide. Others would speculate that they were injured during the shootout and succumbed to smoke inhalation.
Yeah.
But after the fire died down, they retrieved all the bodies. You could only tell Dan and Steve apart because of the height difference. because Steve was a jockey, short
Yeah.
stack. Yeah. Like, it was hard to write this. Like, as much as, like, I don't agree with tactics from both sides, it's just the whole, like, death. So much death. And I would not want to die in a crispy fashion.
No.
Because if that's what happened, like, ugh. But Ned, our beastly Ned, he received over 24 wounds, they say. Joe Byrne was buried in a pauper's grave in Benalla. Very small service, just, family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Dan and Steve were taken back to Greta and buried in unmarked graves by their families in the local cemetery.
Yeah.
It said over 100 people attended the funeral. Dan's cousin, Tom Lloyd, was the undertaker for the service, and a local farmer, Daniel O'Keefe, was the preacher. Dan and Steve's armour was sent to Benalla to be kept there. Ned's armour was sent to Melbourne to be used as evidence for his trial.
Yeah.
And Joe's armour was sent to the police depot in Richmond to, like, be studied and shit like that.
Right.
So Ned stood trial on the 19th of October in 1880.
Yeah.
So we're a fair bit past, like, we've been in lockup for like a year.
Uh-huh.
Or a long time anyway. I don't know how long. Because I've
Recovery
forgotten all my
time,
dates
etc.
already. Yeah. The judge presiding over the case was the same judge who sentenced Ned's mother over the Fitzpatrick incident. So he's already biased. But, with reason too. Both sides presented some witnesses and the case was adjourned until the 28th of that month. So like a week later.
Yeah.
On the later date, Ned faced charges over the deaths of Constable Lonergan and Scanlon. He was not charged over Sergeant Kennedy's murder, but they hit him with the murder of Aaron Sherritt, even though he wasn't present.
Sure.
And the other charges were like bank robbery, resisting arrest. Resisting arrest is the only one that they got him over the Glen Rowan siege.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of other small charges as well. But in the end, his only conviction was for the willful death of Constable Lonergan. They only had to get him for one.
And willful death.
Yeah, willful, like, that's like...
That's premeditated murder.
Yeah. The sentence for that at the time? Death by hanging.
Yep.
Sir Redmond Barry, our presiding judge, said the words, "May God have mercy on your soul," as was customary after handing out a sentence such as death. And Ned is reported to have said, "I will go a little further than that and say, I will see you there where I go."
All right.
Literally,
that's a really classy way of saying "see you in hell, bitch."
Exactly. I love it. Mwah.
Yes.
The Executive Council of Victoria decided on the 3rd of November that Ned would be hanged on the 11th in Melbourne jail.
Right.
In the weeks prior to his execution, thousands of people turned out in the streets of Melbourne, making demands for a reprieve for him. The people leading the campaign were Maggie Skillion, because she had married William Skillion, Kate Kelly, Isaiah Wilde Wright, the dude he went like fist to fist with, and
reasons.
His brother James Kelly had come down. On the 8th of November, a petition of clemency with over 32,000 signatures was presented to the governor's private secretary.
That is a lot of legwork.
That is a lot, but they were suspicious that some of the signatures were not legitimate. These were some fake people. The Executive Council still made a statement saying that the hanging would proceed as originally planned.
Oh.
So Ned had a photo taken the day before his execution. It's another iconic piece of memorabilia. We'll probably throw something up on the Instagram of that. This was a memento for his family to keep. He was also allowed to have goodbye visits with the family. It's reported that his mother's last words to him were, "Mind you die like a Kelly." Yeah. The next day at 10 a.m., Ned was set to be hanged. Yeah. Just, yeah. It's the whole just like, don't be a bitch about it.
What lovely
Don't whine and sob. I know, right? So he was stoic en route to the gallows. I don't even know if we actually have gallows, but anywho. There's a few renditions of what Ned's final words were. Some say he intended to make a speech but made no audible sound. Some say it was, and I quote, "Ah, well, I suppose it has come to this." Another one says, and I quote, "Such is life." Such is life is actually probably the most popular one.
The quoted one.
Yes.
It's usually added to the tattoos.
Yes. The warden claims that he uttered something indiscernible, like they couldn't actually figure it out.
Yep.
The night after he was hanged, so that night, he gets hanged in the morning, that night, James and Kate Kelly held a live Q&A at the Apollo Hall. They charged $1 per person per entry, and they sat on the stage in armchairs and engaged the audience, answered questions, and told stories. Like,
damn.
I have no fucking words. Anything to make a buck, I guess. They got a bunch of bad press for it, tried to do it again, but the police stopped them. After this, they went to Sydney, tried to do the same thing again, and peddled it as the Kate Kelly show, where they showed like some iconic memorabilia and all that sort of stuff.
Why am
but the
I
police
not surprised that Kate's involved?
She's always involved somewhere.
Oh, she always wants to be.
Yeah. So James and Wright still got themselves in and out of trouble for a while. James did live a long life. He did not die until 1946.
Dang.
Yeah, he did good. The reward money for the capture of the gang was dispersed primarily amongst the police. £6,000 of the 8,000 went to the police.
Who didn't see that coming?
Yeah. Hare received the lion's share at £800, and Kerno, the dude that flagged down the train, he complained about his meager £550, to the point where a year later it got bumped up to 1,000. So then he got the lion's share. The native trackers, though, only got £50 apiece.
Yeah, okay.
Ellen Kelly was released in February 1881, lived a relatively decent long life. There was never an autopsy done on Dan or Steve, so there are theories that the corpses were not them.
Right.
This is where our conspiracy theories come in.
Yep.
So some believe that they escaped the shootout and were in Queensland or even America.
Sure.
There was not a lot to fuel this fire, but a gentleman named James Ryan claimed to be the youngest Kelly brother, or the younger Kelly brother. In 1902, a newspaper reported that Dan and Hart were in South Africa and had fought in a war there. A man named Jim Davis in 1938 claimed that he was Dan.
Yep.
And he said that himself, Joe, and Hart had made it out alive. He also said, though, that he was born in the Eureka Stockade in 1854, which makes him too old.
Uh-huh.
Another man named Charles Devine also claimed to be Dan, and scientists went as far as testing his DNA after he passed away to check the validity of that claim.
Uh-huh.
He was not.
No.
But just everybody wants to believe that there was a survivor.
And from the sounds of it, a bunch of men wanted to be the survivor.
Yeah. And yeah, primarily people wanted to be Dan, or wanted to believe that Dan got out.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's the conclusion of our really long tale of the Kelly gang.
Saga.
Yeah, our saga. But
It's been quite a ride.
it has. I love that the legacy has turned into, like, Ned's legacy. Not even the whole Kelly gang. Ned
No.
himself, his legacy has become
Ned.
like the whole, he's a Robin Hood guy of sorts. He was never like, a shithead. He was never like that teenage kid who was like throwing his life down the toilet. People don't look at him like that.
Even though
And it
that's what
only
he
comes
was.
And it only comes down to those last few well-planned raids where they would use what they got to get everybody drunk.
Yes, Ned Kelly himself. I mean, the rest of the Kelly gang is practically forgotten.
Yeah.
Unless you're delving into it like you have. But Ned Kelly himself is very severely romanticized.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said, he had the skills to be a politician.
Yes, he could. He just didn't have the money.
Yeah. I'm
trying to think who he would have been in politics, though.
Ugh.
I mean, the speeches are similar to Clive Palmer speeches, to be honest.
Yeah.
But how can you take Clive Palmer seriously when he's a billionaire saying that?
Yeah.
Billionaire? Millionaire? No, he is billionaire, isn't he?
I think so.
But yes, an extremely rich person going on and on about being there for the little people. So yeah, I can see why people wanted to believe in the pretty stories that Ned would tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm personally highly skeptical of anyone who tells me that they're in it for my best interests.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But gosh, did they get up to some shenanigans.
Oh, wild times.
As you said, our Wild West. Wild times is accurate.
Yeah.
And, can't fault them on a lot of their planning. It was brilliantly done.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially once they got some structure and, as long as Ned primarily remained mostly in charge, they were fine.
Yes.
Until that last kerfuffle. Like, honestly, if he had not have let Kurno out of the hotel, like, if he had not gotten shit-faced.
Or I don't know, if Joe and Dan hadn't gone rogue and decided to shoot Sherritt.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they were going rogue or doing that on orders, to be honest. I couldn't find out.
I suppose that's possible. It just doesn't seem like his usual MO.
No, it's not. And given that it was Joe who shot Sherritt and that's his friend, it does seem like a personal vendetta.
And Dan being notably a hothead throughout the whole piece.
Correct. And Dan and Joe had met in prison, and that's how Joe became a part of the Kelly gang. So
they
he
had
was the
that
brother
closer bond.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I might be crediting Ned a little bit too much, but I like to think that Ned was smarter than sending them after an informant while there were police in the house.
I would think so too, especially for police.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
Joe,
they're severely outnumbered there.
Yeah. And Joe's running off the cockiness of having gotten around through town before and getting away with it for a long time as well.
Yep.
Whereas, Ned was more cautious.
Yep.
So,
I mean, that's another thing. If Joe hadn't been so goddamn cocky visiting his mum all the time.
Yeah, well.
But,
'Tis
Such
what it
is
is.
life.
Yes. Such is life.
I mean, that may not be the real quote, but it's a good one.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
It's a great one. Like, I want to believe that the Kelly gang was also for the people, but the more I learned about the story, because I did grow up believing that from what I've heard in terms of tales and all that sort of stuff.
It's
But
what we all
after
get told.
really, yeah, after really getting into it, I'm like, nah.
They're common criminals.
Yeah, who just used what they had to the best of their advantage. Like, yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And like, okay, fair enough. They were the little people.
They were. Absolutely.
They grew up in abject poverty. They were making the best of what they could, which is fair enough. But to say that they're good people is a stretch.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like, that's some Olympic gymnast level stretching right there.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
the Helen Parr Incredibles stretching right there.
But if anyone would like to let us know what they think, feel free to drop some comments, get in touch with us. You can find us on Instagram at Strange Colony 2.0 or flick us an email, strangecolony@gmail.com. And until next week.
Twitter.
Oh, yeah, Twitter. I keep forgetting our Twitter. What's our Twitter again?
At Strange Colony.
Yes. I will start remembering that. I'll put a little post-it note or something on my laptop.
It'll have to be a post-it so you don't close it.
Exactly. The amount of times I accidentally close my notes.
That's okay. I can cut those out. I'm not cutting this bit out, though.
Fair.
Fair.
I wouldn't either. But we'll see you all next week. I love you. Bye-bye.
I love you. Bye-bye.